who have debunked this and have been very clear that this is not true, what we're hearing, the hateful smears, and have called it out. And we heard it from the local police department as well in Ohio. And you know, as I said, the president said last week this needs to stop. He spoke about it yesterday when he was at the HBCU event in Philly, and he's going to continue to do so. It is undignified and insulting to all of us as Americans, undignified and insulting to spread these types of filth. It is filth. It is dangerous. It puts us less safe. You know, it's dangerous and it's disruptive and it's fearful.
So when you say it's undignified and the other words that you use, but you also said dangerous, how dangerous is this?
When communities feel unsafe because these type of hateful smears, these conspiracy theories are being spread about them, when schools are being shut down, hospitals, the community in Springfield, Ohio, it puts them in danger. It does, and we've seen it. And leaders should not be pulling us apart. They should not be pulling communities apart. They should be bringing them together in shared values. That's what the president believes.
And my next and last question. We're watching the news and seeing what's happening to Sean Diddy Combs. With that said, he has been very political in the past. He has endorsed candidates. He said to vote. He said not to vote. And now this, what we see last night and today. What does this say to the American voting public as we look to these celebrities for endorsements? And I say that in light of one of the largest endorsement that this administration has received so far from people like Taylor Swift, people in the entertainment industry. What does this say to the American voter? Does a celebrity have weight, that kind of weight?
I mean, look, I'm not going to get into the politics of today and what an endorsement means. It's not for me to do from here.
I think as you speak of Taylor Swift and other endorsements by entertainers, that is something I think the campaign could speak to directly. I did at the top talk about how, and want to do this without getting into politics, right? About today being voter registration day and the importance that this administration has put towards that. And also lifting up, making sure that legislation, the John Lewis legislation, gets passed through in Congress. We want to make sure that voting is more accessible for everyone that is eligible. Everyone that is eligible. That's from students to veterans and to tribal communities. It is important that voting is made eligible for is made possible for folks who are eligible. I'm not going to get into entertainers and what that means for the American public, especially as we're in the middle of an election cycle. But voting, as you know, is a sacred right. And I think we believe people should have the ability to exercise that right to vote, whoever they choose to vote for.
So, understanding his Diddy's past dabbles in politics and understanding what's happening today, if true, does this administration condemn Diddy for what he's done?
Look, it's an ongoing situation, legal matter. I would have to refer you to Department of Justice. Everything kind of is happening today, and so we just don't comment on ongoing legal matter. I'm not going to do that from here, so I'm going to leave it there. Go ahead, Anita.
Thank you so much. I have a quick Iran question, then a longer domestic question. Just starting with Iran, their new president said that he is willing to have talks with the United States. He did give some conditions, and he also said he's willing to talk again about the nuclear program. Is the White House willing to play ball here?
So we have long said, and I kind of said this in the beginning, that we view diplomacy as the best way to achieve an effective long-term solution when it comes to Iran's nuclear program. That is something that we have been pretty consistent about in the past 3.5 years, and we believe that having those diplomatic conversations when we talk about our relationships across the globe is so critical. However, we are far and away from anything like that right now. So we will judge Iran on their actions, not their words. Always been clear about that as well. And if Iran wants to demonstrate seriousness or a new approach, they should stop their nuclear and regional escalations.
And then on domestic matters, first of all, have any figures from Ohio asked the administration for any help or assistance to safeguard the vulnerable communities there? Is this something you're considering? And then secondly, just zooming out, looking at the world and looking at your use of the word dangerous so many times today, what sort of message is the combination of these threats against the life of the candidate and all of this rhetoric, what message is this sending to American adversaries about the strength and the power of democracy? What would you say to them about that?
So two different things. You're asking about Springfield, Ohio, and I said this last week and I'll repeat it here. First of all, we got to condemn any type of hateful smears and conspiracy theories. And when you do things like that, it does make people feel less safe. It does make communities feel less safe. And it's hateful. And you've heard from the mayor of Springfield, you've heard from the governor of Ohio saying this is not true. And these are two Republicans who are saying this is not true. And we've seen what that has done to the Haitian, in this instance, the Haitian population. And it is not right. It is not okay. Going to get to your question. So since day one, the president has always wanted to make sure that communities across the country have the support they need. As we talk about migrants coming into their community and wanting to make sure that they have the help and the resources available to them. And so over the past 2 years, we have provided over $130 million to help communities across Ohio hosting recently arrived migrants, including Springfield. And since this past spring, back in April, DHS has been directly engaged with the city of Springfield and local officials to make sure they have the support they need. But again, this goes back to something that we talk about all the time from here, which is the bipartisan border deal. It is critical and important to continue to move forward with that. Republicans got in the way because of what the former president said. Do not do this. Do not move this forward. They put politics over doing the right thing for the American people. And so we're certainly want to see this move forward, but they've gotten in the way in getting a needed assistance, a continued assistance when it comes to migrant resources in these types of cities.
And then the world is watching. Is democracy dangerous?
I mean, look, we are always going to condemn any form of political violence. That's something that we've always been very clear about, whether it's here or abroad. And I will quote what the president said when he was at the McCain Institute just last year: democracy means rejecting and repudiating political violence. Regardless of party, such as violence is never, never, never acceptable in America. Those are values he and the vice president have always stood for at home and in the world. Opposing political violence at every turn and encourage all leaders to do the same. So we're going to be very clear about that. We've been consistent. It's not just here domestically. We're going to continue to condemn political violence abroad as well as here, and that is what the president and the vice president has done for almost 4 years. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. A couple of questions about Brazil and then Venezuela. Today, the president had a briefing on wildfires in California and Oregon. I wonder if he's watching what's happening in Brazil. Brazil is also on fire. The Amazon is on fire. Many parts of Brazil are having record-breaking wildfires. Is the U.S. working with Brazil to help with the situation and help to mitigate the problem in the future?
Obviously, our hearts go out to what we're seeing in Brazil with the wildfires, and we certainly are here to assist. We are in contact with the Brazilian government and are connecting experts in both governments, so we're assisting in ways that we can. Anything further, certainly I would refer you to the State Department and the USAID, but our hearts go out to the folks in Brazil who are directly affected by the wildfires.
On X, Twitter has been banned in Brazil for almost 20 days now. What is the White House view or position on this matter?
Say that again?
X, And social media, Elon Musk social media is banned in Brazil. It's 20 days now that doesn't work in Brazil anymore. Was a dispute with a judge from the Supreme Court, and now it's banned for 20 days. What is the position of the U.S. government on this matter?
Look, I think when it comes to social media, we have been very clear that we think that, folks should have access to social media. It's a form of freedom, freedom of speech, and certainly that is something more broadly that we have always have been very clear about. And so I just don't have anything beyond that to share.
Can I just do a follow-up from a colleague about Venezuela?
Sure.
The White House viewed the detention of 3 Americans and 2 Spanish in Venezuela who are accused of attempting to assassinate Maduro as a potential retaliation for U.S. sanctions and Spain's decision to welcome Edmundo Gonzalez.
So that is categorically false. It is not true. U.S. involvement in a plot to overthrow Maduro is, again, categorically false. This is just another attempt by Maduro to distract from the July 28th election results. The United States continue to support a democratic way forward in Venezuela. And so we are closely, as we have been, monitoring the situation. And due to privacy consideration, we have certainly no further comments from here.
Karine, regarding the exploding pagers in Lebanon, forgive me if I missed it. Did you say if the president had been briefed on the incident?
I have not spoken to the president, so I can't speak to that. I can go back and make sure that NSC was able to do this. My guess is he's aware and he's been briefed, but I haven't directly spoken to the president about that.
Regarding the phone call between President Biden and former President Trump, how long did it last?
I'm not going to go beyond what we read out. The president called the former president and was relieved that he was safe, and the former president certainly appreciated the call. I just don't have anything further beyond that. He expressed his he was thankful for President Biden calling him to check in on him. I just don't have anything beyond that.
And down in Florida, the governor there, Ron DeSantis, said he doesn't think it's in the best interest of the state or the nation to have the same federal agency seeking to prosecute Trump also handle the alleged assassination attempt against him. What's the White House view on that? He wants to open a state investigation into the alleged assassination attempt, and he says that the feds should not be investigated. It's not in the interest of the nation for the feds to investigate that.
So look, the president has complete confidence in the Secret Service. I've said this multiple times at this point. There is an investigation happening. We're going to let that process move forward. And I think until that happens, I don't think anybody should comment on that.
And finally, you said that the president is heading to UNGA. Is the vice president going as well?
Right now, the vice president is not planning to participate in the UN General Assembly related events. As in the past, it is possible she meets with foreign leaders here in Washington, D.C. next week, but I don't have anything to announce, further to announce on her involvement.
Is that a conscious decision, sort of like there's only one president at a time type thing?
I wouldn't read it that way. Appreciate the question, though. Go ahead.
Thanks, Karine. Staying on UNGA, the president will be delivering his final address as president before that body next week. Could you talk a little bit about what the message is that he wants to deliver about his leadership over the last 4 years, particularly with the fact that the wars in Ukraine as well as Gaza are still unresolved, and his predecessor has repeatedly claimed that neither of those conflicts would have happened if he were still president?
As you can appreciate, Francesca, I'm not going to get ahead of the president. He's going to speak for himself. He's going to lay out what his thoughts are when we see him deliver his address to the Assembly next week. And so I'm going to not get ahead of the president and just gonna leave it there for now.
And on the issue of Russia's war against Ukraine, the German chancellor said last week that talks needed to speed up and that at the next peace conference that Russia should be at the table. Is it the White House's view that the next peace talks need to take place before November?
Look, I've always been clear, and we've always been clear, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. So this is something, obviously, as it relates to that, certainly Ukraine has to be involved and make sure that they're at the table. I cannot speak to anything further or beyond the next peace talks. But I will say, as I've said many times before, as my colleagues have said many times before, this can end today. The war in Ukraine that Russia started, Russia's aggression, could end today. It could end today. This is Mr. Putin's war. He started this war. And he can stop it by moving his troops out, by ending the war on a sovereign territory, on a democracy. He can end this. And so I'll just leave it there. Go ahead, Danny.
Thanks, Karine. Just going back to Lebanon, a few hours before these pages exploded, Israel said that it was expanding the aims of its war against Hamas to focus on Hezbollah along the northern border with Lebanon. Do you have any indications that this incident may have been a kind of prelude to some kind of major Israeli operation?
I'm not going to speculate from here. Like I said, we've seen the reports. I just don't have any more information, and I'm just not going to speculate.
Very quickly, the other day, President Biden gave the thumbs up when I asked him if he was going to be traveling to Angola, as our friends at Reuters reported. Do you have any more details on that? Can you confirm any details?
So you asked the questions and your friends at Reuters reported it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I wish it was. Reuters reporting it. I do have to admit.
I don't have anything. We don't have anything at this time to share on any travel for the president. So just leave it there. Okay.
Thank you, Karine. It's been only 2 days since somebody allegedly tried to kill Donald Trump again. And you're here at the podium in the White House briefing room calling him a threat. How many more assassination attempts on Donald Trump until the president and the vice president and you pick a different word to describe Trump other than threat?
Peter, if anything from this administration, I actually completely disagree with the premise of your question, the question that you're asking. It is also incredibly dangerous in the way that you're asking it, because American people are watching. And to say that from an administration who has consistently condemned political violence, from an administration where the president called the former president and was thankful, grateful that he was okay, from an administration who has called out January 6th, called out the attack of Paul Pelosi, called out and said we need to lower the temperature after the Butler incident, and now for you to make that kind of comment in your question, because your question involved a comment and a statement. And, it is, that is also incredibly dangerous. When we have been very clear in condemning political violence from here, what I have said about the president, the former president, about January 6th is facts that you all have reported. It is fact. When you have a former president who basically says that the election wasn't, the results of the election were not the results of the election. When dozens of more than 60 Republican judges said that it was a free and fair election. More than 60 said it was indeed a free and fair election. You had more than 2,000 people who were told to go to the Capitol. It was one of the darkest days of our democracy. One of the darkest days. There were people law enforcement officers who died because of what happened at the Capitol. And they were there because the former president told them to go there. I mean, I don't know if that's not a threat in our democracy when it was one of the darkest days of our democracy, January 6th, one of the darkest days. And so we have been very clear from here. Now, we can have a disagreement on policies. We can, on issues. That is what we should do. It is important to have those disagreements. It is welcome to have those disagreements on the economy, on healthcare, on foreign policy. But when you start bringing political rhetoric, that is not okay. And that's what you've heard from us too. You've heard of differences on policies.
But to your point, there are people watching at home who might miss the part where you say, let's lower the temperature, and there are mentally unstable people who are attempting to kill political candidates, attempting to kill Donald Trump, and they are still hearing this White House refer to him as a threat. Is there no concern that people are taking that literally?
We're using examples. We're not just saying that just to say it. January 6th, Peter. January 6th. Wait, January 6th. How many times do we have to? January 6th, 2021. That is a fact. What was reported that happened on that day by some of your colleagues. I mean, and we have at the same time denounced political violence over and over, political rhetoric over and over again, over and over again. But I know your focus has to be on this side of the house. It can't be on your side of the house. I get that. But we also have to be careful on how you're asking me these questions. People are watching, and is what you are saying about us raising political violent rhetoric, however you just formulated it, this is an administration that has denounced and condemned any type of political rhetoric or violence. It is the reason why this president decided to run in 2020. That is why the president decided to come back. He believed that it is important to save the soul of America, of our nation, and he believed it was important that we continue to fight for our democracy, fight for our freedom. That's what you see from this administration. I'm moving on. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about overtime. So does the president and vice president support no taxes on overtime for workers?
So just a couple of things on that. Look, the president and this vice president has been pretty consistent on making sure that we continue to lower costs for Americans, but also at the same time make sure that we're increasing wages, and that's what we have seen. Again, the question that you're asking me is supporting overtime pay. This is something, a proposal from in the 2024 election, so I'm going to be really, really mindful. But we also can't forget what the last administration did. They eliminated overtime protections for millions of workers. The Biden-Harris administration restored overtime protections to 1 million workers, and next year we will extend protections to another 3 million workers. That means our administration is ensuring higher paychecks and more time with family for millions of Americans after the last administration took that away. And so we cannot forget that, what this administration has done and versus what the last administration has done.
So from January 2021 to now, overall prices are up 20%. Food at home is up 21%. Electricity is up about 28%. And the list goes on. Does the president believe that Americans are better off now than they were 4 years ago?
Yes, and I understand what you're asking me. I get it. There's still a lot more work to be done, and we've always said that. That's why the president is always, and the vice president are always continuing to try to figure out how do we lower those costs. And we cannot forget what happened 4 years ago. We cannot forget what this president and this vice president walked into, what they inherited from the previous administration. And so it was an economy that was a free-for-all, that was a once in a century pandemic. There was no comprehensive plan to deal with that pandemic. The president and Democrats in Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, shots in arms, money in pockets. And also when we took over, the last year of the former administration, violence, murder was at an all-time high. And we have been able to bring down violent crime at a 50-year low. And so we're able to negotiate lower drug prices. We are beating Big Pharma, something that former presidents, elected officials have been trying to do for some time. And so while we still have a lot more work to do, we do believe 4 years ago there was a pandemic. People were dying. Thousands of people were dying. There was no plan. Our economy was literally in a downfall.
So one more, if I might. October 1st, if the dock workers don't get a contract, there could be a strike. Is the president, do you know, going to invoke the federal law to avoid or to
I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. I'm not going to get hypotheticals from here. All right, thanks, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.